Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and something that came through my feed, which I got to laugh about, which I'm going to flip in here for you guys, is Nick Wright trying to claim that shorter guys don't have any advantage in lifting and it's nonsense, whatever. I'm going to break that down a little bit and explain why that's ridiculous. And because he clearly doesn't understand the argument of what's going on there, and clearly doesn't follow various strength sports around the world enough to actually understand what's going on. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, do a little crafting, and let's talk about this. Now, a few people have noted, hey Jason, why do you go so hard on Nick Wright lately? I mean, he's always been dumb and he's always given bad advice, but you were real nice about it in the past. You quit being so nice about it. And he confronted me on that too. And I let him know in private what my grudge is with him and what's going on. But yeah, Nick absolutely caused grief for some of my loved ones. But he's stupid and gives dangerous advice. It hurts people and hurts himself. So I'm not going to be nice anymore just because I think my loved ones deserve better than that. This guy needs to be called out for his stupidity. Now, that being said, we're going to make it educational though. So, Cliff Notes for those who don't like the really long videos. Well, short guys don't have to move the weight as far, and they can hold more muscle per pound of body weight as long as their frame is capable of holding the muscle they need to be in a weight, or if without drugs, or if they can tolerate enough drugs to reach a certain weight class while still staying leaner. Longer detail there for people who don't understand what's going on. Shorter guys absolutely dominate in both powerlifting and Olympic lifting weight classes. Shorter guys absolutely dominate them. And they do have a clear advantage. Nick is looking at pretty much open-ended weight classes, or really heavy guys in the 275 class. And that's pretty heavy, guys. To be 275 pounds as a lifter or is big. Or the open-ended classes. When it comes to absolute strength, open-ended classes don't take your weight into account for any formulas anymore. If you're 308 plus, you're a super heavyweight. Doesn't matter whether you're 350, 400, 500 pounds. Doesn't matter. All right. When you have a weight class to make, shorter guys have a very definite advantage. First of all, they don't have to move the weight as far. All right? It takes more energy, more strength, and more muscle fiber recruitment to move a weight a longer distance. That's one reason I tell you guys that you need to be doing full range of motion to develop size and strength, because you recruit more muscle fibers. That's one reason I have guys do narrower bench press. You move the weight further than you do with a wider grip. The wider grip gives us advantage in competition because you're shortening down the range of motion. It's easier. If you want to get bigger and stronger, you need to be worried about how many muscle fibers can I recruit, not how can I make this lift easier in my training. You can always adjust it as you get closer to a competition. But longer ranges of motion require more muscle fiber recruitment. Therefore, they're more difficult even with the same weight. Well, someone who is 6 inches shorter is going to move the bar 6 inches less when they deadlift. They're going to move the bar sometimes up to 6 inches less when they squat. All right, they are not moving the weight as far. And so particularly you start comparing guys who are, say, 5'5", 5'6", versus someone who's over 6 foot in any weight class that's like 220 or less. When drugs are involved, even 220 shorter guys have a very definite advantage. But drug-free, you start talking about 165, 181s. Think about that for a minute. Think about it. How short of a distance they have to move it in comparison. It requires less muscle mass, less energy, less muscle fiber recruitment to move it a shorter distance. All right? The other thing that you have to factor in is the amount of muscle that their frame can hold and the amount of lean mass that they have. You can't move weight without muscle mass. In fact, a bigger muscle is absolutely documented. The thicker muscle fibers are, any given muscle fiber type, its power and force generation is directly, measurably proportionate to its thickness. And that's true of everyone. The same whatever type fiber, 2AF, whatever fiber type, and any human has similar force generation based upon its thickness, even from person to person. What different people have is different distributions of those fiber types, and some fibers produce more force than others. But for any given fiber type, its force generation is absolutely determined by its thickness. That's the factor that determines how much force it generates. More muscle, particularly the upper threshold fibers, the ones that generate the most power per unit of volume, those, the thicker they are, the more strength you have, the more power you can generate. Now, obviously, different leverages come into play, insertion points vary, those are all genetics, but the fibers themselves, the bigger they are, the more advantage you have, the more weight you should be capable of lifting. All right? Weight classes set your weight. You can only weigh in the 181, you can only weigh 181 pounds. You can't weigh 181.1, you're kicked out of the class. They throw you into the 198. All right? You can't go even a tenth of a pound over. You can't go a single ounce over. That's it. So in the 181, if you're going to weigh down around 179 to 181, taller guys have more bone. That is, if they have 5 extra pounds of bone or 10 extra pounds of bone, that's 5 or 10 pounds less muscle they can have while being at the same body weight. That's automatically displaced. Just like people say being leaner gives you an advantage to a certain extent, it does. Because if you have 20 pounds of extra body fat over what you need to maintain your strength, you're in a higher weight class than you need to be, and that's going to move you up a full weight class. So bone also does the same thing. Bone doesn't make you stronger to have extra bone weight. It doesn't give you more force generation. Now, it might give you a sturdier frame, but it doesn't make you inherently stronger. Bone doesn't flex. Bone doesn't generate force. The shorter guy, if he's got 10 pounds less bone on his body, that's 10 more pounds of muscle he can have in the same weight class, in addition to moving the weight a shorter distance. So if he has to move the weight 6 inches less distance and he has 10 pounds more muscle, if all other factors are equal, he's going to destroy the 6'2" guy. He's going to destroy him if he's 7 or 8 inches shorter than him. He can't even compete with them. The taller guy can't, because he has less muscle mass in the same weight class, because of his bone actually causing more weight. The issue we run into, the only reason that taller guys do well in the heavier weight classes, as a general rule, is because the bigger frame means they can put more muscle on, and oftentimes the shorter guys are limited on how much muscle they can gain. You know, a 5'7" guy can only gain so much muscle mass. Even with drugs in his system, he's going to reach a threshold where he either can't afford to buy more drugs, or the side effects start to add up so much that, again, he's going to eventually be limited on how much muscle. Now, we could argue, you know, you got 300-pound Mr. Olympias and stuff competing in bodybuilding who are, you know, under 5'9", like 5'7", 5'8". But look at their drug yield. It's absolutely astronomical, and the side effects are insane. One of the genetic traits to being a top bodybuilder is having a resistance to the side effects, so that you can take massive amounts of these drugs. Not every powerlifter is going to have that. So the shorter guys are going to be at a disadvantage of many of them don't have $30,000 a year to spend on drugs like an IFBB Pro does. Or they can't handle the side effects from something like that. So you're not going to see them carrying as much muscle mass. But if they were able to put enough muscle on their frame, the shorter guys would still dominate the bigger guys in the 275. But the issue is, again, the amount of muscle required to be there. It's, again, the drug intake becomes excessive for a guy that height to do it. Whereas in the taller guy, because he has a bigger frame, he fills out easier, he would need less drugs to be a leaner 275. Just way, way less drugs involved. Just like when he started naturally, he could probably have 20 pounds of muscle on the shorter guy without drugs. So he's already got a 20-pound advantage, and you put drugs in the mix, it's the same sort of thing. The smaller guy's going to need a hell of a lot more drugs. That's why the shorter guys really struggle. They're just not wanting to put that much stuff into their body. They either can't afford it, don't want to die young, or they can't handle the side effects of it. So there's always a breaking point there. But if you found someone who could tolerate it and wanted to spend the money, you would see shorter guys dominating even up to the 275. The only reason, of course, they couldn't do it in the open-ended classes is because you're just talking about too much size. You know, to be over 308 pounds lean, if you're a really short guy, it just wouldn't be worth it in terms of any sort of strength sport. Now, obviously, Olympic lifting, they're tested more, so they're more limited in what they can use. They're all still on drugs, but they're more limited in what they could use. But if you look at that, it's pretty much the same thing. The shorter guys dominate. Those are the guys who win the gold medals. And it's because, again, if you're shorter, you have less bone weight, so therefore you can have more muscle weight in the same class, and you move the weight a shorter distance. All right, it is simply easier to deadlift 600 pounds if you only have to move it 14 inches instead of 20 inches. All right, basic physics. It's easier to be a certain weight with more muscle if you have less bone. If you have less other weight on your body, besides muscle, it's easier to be in a weight class. And so all through the weight classes, shorter guys dominate. And generally, what you see happen, like in powerlifting, to where you see a guy who's not that short actually dominating a weight class, there's another reason for it. It has to do with the fact that there isn't always a wide enough genetic diversity in powerlifting, meaning people with amazing genetics tend to go into stuff like the NFL. They might go into Olympic lifting. You don't see the same genetic talent pool in powerlifting that you see in other strength sports because it's just not as prestigious. There's no money. There's no Olympics. Nobody's making millions of dollars doing it. Therefore, you have a smaller gene pool to draw from. So occasionally you'll see a guy who isn't that short win them, but it's only because someone with good genetics who is shorter hasn't come along and decided to do his weight class. That's usually the only reason. It's as simple as that. And it comes down to just a smaller gene pool. When you look at guys like Jesse Norris, look at what he lifts in his weight class. Even drug tested, which means less drugs available to him, he was still destroying most guys in the next weight class up in untested competition. Just genetics. He's a very genetically gifted athlete. He's one of the few guys in powerlifting. There's probably only 5 to 10 guys in powerlifting who have amazing, absolutely amazing top tier strength and athletic genetics. You go to the Olympics and it's chock full of them because it's just, again, not as popular. There's not as much to draw in people who end up having those amazing gifts. You see a few of them because they just kind of wander in, but it's more of a just by randomness, just by chance. The sport gets lucky when that happens, and that's where you get guys like Jesse Norris. But overall, this idea that shorter guys don't have an amazing advantage in strength class or in strength sports due to the weight classes is downright silly. And again, we're talking about relative strength, not absolute strength. When it comes to absolute strength, obviously the taller guys have the advantage because they're just bigger and a big frame can hold more muscle. When you're 6'7" with extremely wide shoulders, you can stack more muscle on your frame. But you're still going to find that pound for pound, the shorter guy is going to outlift you every single time if he has even close to as good a genetics as you, is trained as hard as you, trained as long as you. Everything else, other factors being equal, he's going to destroy the taller guy still when it comes to relative strength for all those other reasons listed. That's just the nature of it. So while we could argue that for absolute strength, the tall guys have an advantage in some ways, very, very few people compete in these open-ended weight classes. The vast majority, the overwhelming majority, meaning over 90% of all both power lifters and Olympic lifters compete in some sort of weight class that actually has a weight range. And that's where all the medals are. That's where everything else is. Everything is broken down by weight class. And when weight classes come into play, short guys have a clear advantage. So, I mean, Nick doesn't even think about these things, doesn't even think about what he's saying before he types it or says it. Pretty much what we're getting used to with him. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.